Sidebar. Anyway, okay. So today, we're still going to be talking about that whole idea of hustle and grind and surrendering to the flow and all that kind of stuff. But I want to talk about it in the context of learning and in the context of making sure you're surrounding yourself with people and filling the gaps. Because there's no one person that knows everything about everything. That person does, well, that person, earthly person, doesn't exist. So here's where this came up. When we talk about surrendering to the flow and being in flow, you have where you're trying to go, right? You have your end goal, you know what you're trying to do, you know where you're trying to be. And that really helps you, as we talked about, be able to pivot and be able to move and be able to say, y'all, okay, I got to tell y'all what Jerry's doing.
What? I just want to know.
This is so funny. I wish I could turn my camera around.
No.
So I said, when I was talking about masks, I said, they tell you you are covered if you can blow through your mask, double mask, but just make sure your mask is good. But if you can blow out a candle or a match through your mask, it's not good. Why did Jerry just walk back in the studio with a match, trying to blow out a match through her surgical mask? I'm just saying.
I wanted to know if I had a good mask for real. So when that free game was dropped, I wanted to test it.
That is, y'all, that's hilarious. So I'm trying to tell you, it did work though. You weren't able to blow it out.
I wasn't able to blow it out.
So there you go. Right. So anyway, y'all, it's going to be one of those days apparently. So back to the topic at hand. So, when you're surrendering to flow and really just paying attention to the end goal and allowing yourself to be flexible with kind of ways you may have to change or move or morph because you're just staying kind of in the moment, as opposed to then beating yourself up to say, oh my gosh, I wanted to do steps 1, 2, 3, but then I had to stop and do step 5 because 1, 2, and 3 didn't work. Give yourself a minute. But the other piece about that and being in flow is, as you move along the journey, paying attention to when you need to find someone who has information or expertise that you don't have, and reaching out to them for help. This is really, really an issue as you begin to move through your career and you get to be a much more senior leader, or if you've built multiple businesses or all that kind of stuff. When you begin to, as I say, breathe your own exhaust about how much you know and how much you've done, the learning or your willingness to set aside ego to be able to learn something, that becomes harder and harder. And it doesn't necessarily become harder and harder because you're egotistical. It becomes harder and harder because we've gotten into the habit of being the person that everybody else is relying on to have all the answers. So we get out of the habit and we lose the courage to say, I don't know, or I need help, or that doesn't make any sense, or is there another way? We lose the courage and the ability to do that kind of stuff as we continue to move up and have more and more success. So surrendering to the flow includes surrendering your ego. Surrendering your mindset. Good morning, Odessa. Surrendering your mindset that says you know everything, or that you're supposed to know everything. Because I got to tell you, one of the best things you can do, good morning, Pittsburgh, one of the best things you can do is tell people, I don't know, but I'll find out. Because you're then giving them permission to not be perfect. You're giving the people who are following you, the people who are trusting you, you're giving them permission to say, I need some help. I need to ask a question. I don't understand. And you're showing a level of vulnerability that makes you more real. So here's how this played out for me, because I like to give examples. And I was told I need to tell more of my stories. So as I'm moving into year 3 in this business, which is always a pivotal year, it's been interesting. Y'all, this entrepreneurship thing is not easy. I would not be doing anything else. I love it. I love it. I love it. And it's just interesting battling your head trash, right? And especially in the pandemic, because then you got a lot of time by yourself. So as I've been looking at where I'm going and what I'm wanting to do, and Jerry and I have been talking about this, and I've talked about this with you guys, I have just been so absolutely overwhelmed by how much I love doing this radio show and spending time with all of you and having these conversations, which, by the way, quick sidebar, the 1-year anniversary, like I talked about last time, is on March 2nd, Tuesday, March 2nd.
Ooh, we gonna climb.
I'm telling you, I would really love it. I would really, really love it if you guys would participate. Send me questions. Is there something you want to talk about? I really want to make it interactive as much as possible on Tuesday, March 2nd. So now you got time to think about your questions and stuff, okay? So we'll just make it kind of a open show on March 2nd.
Let me give them a number they can start calling in, too.
Oh, beautiful.
Okay? It's 713-319-8347. 713-319-8347. So we want to make that a big deal for you.
Yes, please keep that number in mind because I would love for y'all to call in, ask a question. Let's chit chat on March the 2nd. So, as I started, thinking about that, and remember, I set an intention in 2019 that I was going to be more visible. The girl that didn't even have a picture on her LinkedIn was only on Facebook because that's where my salsa group was. I mean, just social media just wasn't my thing. Still don't love it, but I do it. The fact that I'm on Clubhouse is like, I think the world is coming to an end, right? So, as I walked into this year number 3, I said, I did everything I tell you guys to do. Go back, celebrate the successes from 2020, because there were some. There really were some things we could celebrate. And look at the learnings. Where are you going to go? What strategy you're going to set? Because if you don't at least have a strategy and know where you're going, how do you know who you need to help you get there? If you don't know where you're going, how do you know who you need on your team? So I know that I'm loving the radio show and I want to continue to do that. And I want to continue to be a part of this amazing growth that Jerry has started. And I want to support that and continue to be a piece of that. I want the podcast to continue to grow. And it's not just about me. I just had this conversation with somebody yesterday. It's not just about me. It's because I love serving you guys and I love interacting and I love having conversations that can create aha moments, which reminds me, I need to tell y'all what I said about recollection and feeling. So if I don't say that before the end of the show, somebody remind me. So I started having this conversation with this person that is doing some work for me. And I have some folks that are doing all of my back end stuff, right? So they're making sure the website's up. They're making sure if people, when people pay me, how they get paid, all that kind of stuff. They're making sure all that stuff works. And we're having to continue to have some conversations because sometimes things fall and we just got to get clear. And y'all know me, it's not unkind to be clear. And so part of clarity too, though, is I've got to be really clear so that I'm not kind of stirring them up and changing stuff on the fly. So we're having another strategy session just to make sure that works. And there's another piece that has happened. We have with someone who has been doing all my clips. So you guys, if you're following me, you're seeing like my videos. We're doing a lot of clips of those and using them. And Jenny, her company is Silverbow Projects. Jenny has been taking all those. She listens to every radio show. She listens to every podcast. She is clipping those videos for me. She's just doing a lot of stuff and has become an amazing supporter and has told me on multiple occasions, she's like, you know what? I just love what you're doing. She said, so yes, I'm listening to everything. You're paying me to do that. You're paying me to do the podcast. I mean, the clips and everything. But because I'm listening, I'm actually learning. And it's stuff that I need to hear too. And the more I listen to you, the more I believe everybody needs to hear you and everybody needs to see you. And you can't pay for that kind of support, right? Because you can pay people to do stuff for you. Because you cannot pay people to support you because that's not authentic. We're seeing what happened. You can see that in politics, right? You can't pay people to support you. You can pay people to do what you want them to do, but support is different. And so we were having this conversation yesterday because she has created for me, because we wanted to create some more engagement. Because I like engaging with people. What are you thinking? How can I uplift people? And she helped create this thing called Empowerment Village. And we had a long conversation about that because I'm all about authenticity. So she created this village for me and is posting stuff and it's really getting a lot of engagement. Please go join it. It's mostly for women, but I love men. So if y'all feel so inclined and you can be nice, then you're more than welcome to join the Empowerment Village. So the Empowerment Village is posting things that's uplifting. It's women supporting women. It's really uplifting us. And it's on Facebook. I should have said that. It's called Empowerment Village on Facebook. And what has happened over time is, and yes, some of it, you're doing ads and stuff so people know it's there, but the level of engagement has been really high. We're going to do some more because I want to get more conversations going. But she has really been able to look at things and post and interact with my voice, which is incredible because you're always looking for somebody, copywriters, ghostwriters, ad people, marketing people. You're always looking for somebody who has your voice, because there are only so many hours in the day, and you need to be able to stay in your zone of genius. So if you think about even executives in corporate settings, the ones that have the best executive assistants, the executive assistants can write that letter for them and just have them sign it, because they know them so well. They know so much about the business. They know so much about the department that they are able to not only support and protect that executive, but they're able to act on that executive's behalf in a way that supports their reputation, their desire, their strategy. And so you look for those relationships that enable you to have the same thing. So as we were talking yesterday, I'm like, you know what? I want to see that same kind of thing on my business page. I want to really look at the engagement. I'm still not happy with my website. It looks so much better than it did, but it's just not there. There's something that's not working. And I need to be actually getting out there and doing more stuff and talking to people and building people up. I don't need to be working on my website. I mean, it was one of those conversations. And finally, she had actually gone through and looked at everything. She looked at all my social media. She looked at all my websites. She looked at every post. She looked at everything and then put together a report. And what she had said was, hey, Laurel, if you don't mind, I'd like to look at everything and see it. And I can just tell you what I think. You can use it, not use it. I can just tell you what I think, give you some suggestions, because I really believe in what you're doing. And I'm like, sure. And I was honest. I said, I have made so much investment in this business. And there are some areas where I'm really frustrated. One of those being some of the social media stuff. I said, so I do want your feedback. And I'm going to admit I might be a little emotional about some of it. I'm just saying. And so she's like, nope, I understand. So we went over it yesterday. And as we were talking and as she was giving me feedback, number one, it was a masterful feedback session because she knew where my head was, but she was able to deliver it very clearly, very concisely, and with compassion, right? Because she knew where my head was. And I knew that her purpose for doing it was to get me where I said I want to go. As we kept having the conversation, I finally said, you know what, Jenny? I said, I'm just going to say this because my spirit is leading me to say this. You are my person. You're my person. Because I've been looking for that. I had someone else tell me, Laurel, you don't need another copywriter and another this, another that. You need a COO. You need somebody who's getting all the stuff done and just making sure it happens. Because I'm a type A, y'all. If you got a couple of times to not get stuff done that we talked about before, I'm like in it, just getting it done. Because see, I'm tired. And I can't trust you, right? And so I have to be very mindful of that so that when I get people around me, and that's why I personally am not looking to have employees. I will pay for services because we're going to get the services right. And if they're not right, then I go find somebody else to do it. I mean, it's pretty simple for me, right? And so as we were talking and I said, I just think you're my person, because one of the things she said was, Laurel, you need an executive producer. That's what you need. I had not thought of it that way because it isn't a COO that I need. Because the executive producer is the person who's like, okay, yes, you are your brand. Because a COO is only operational. That's what a COO does. COO takes care of, that's a chief operating officer. They take care of the operations. An executive producer for your brand, especially since I am my brand, is someone who understands what that is, understands the message, understands how I want to show up, and ensures everything around it supports that. It's connected to people that are supposed to be getting the work done and make sure that happens. And here's the thing about that. The reason I told y'all that long story was this. If I were in a spot where I was so upset and frustrated and irritated that I just figured, you know what? I've been trying to find people. I can't find anybody. Nobody's giving me the stuff I need. I'm just going to go figure it all out myself. I would never have had that conversation with Jenny. And if I was not willing to say, I am not going to go learn all these algorithms. Yeah. I don't know what's happening with Facebook. What's happening? Really? Now I'm going to have to figure out Clubhouse, right? It's too much. And I had to come to the conclusion that, one, because I don't love it, it's not something I need to do. Two, there are people that have genius in those spaces. That's not me. And it does not speak negatively about me that is not my zone of genius nor my desire to do. Because there are other people that it is their zone of genius and they love it. And they love it so much that they are exceptional at it. And so if you can surrender to where you're trying to go, surrender your ego, it gives you the opportunity to have those people come into your life that you need to get you where you want to go. But when we sit in our own ego and we are unwilling to listen and to admit that we need some help or that somebody else may know something, that's when we get in trouble. That's when we're burning ourselves out. That's when we have a hard time getting to our goals. But that is a difficult thing. True leaders understand you got to listen more than you speak. That's why we got 2 ears and 1 mouth. We listen more than we speak. And it doesn't mean that when you talk to somebody, you just go out and do everything they just told you to do. You still use some discernment, because there may be stuff that people tell you to do that's just not like you. For example, people do these live launches that are like 5, 8, 9 days. And they work really well. They work really well. There's a formula. It works. People get 6 and 7 figure, launches. But I know me. 9 days is too long for me. And the people that need me, who really need the work that I'm doing, are going to know that in day 2, 3. Right? They're going to either know I'm somebody they want to work with, or they're going to know I'm not somebody they want to work with. And 9 days isn't going to fix that. So let's do a quick burn, 3 days. I'm out of your hair. You got a decision to make. I'll come back on and do a couple of lives just to give you an opportunity to ask some questions and connect, because I know people like to connect before they make a decision. That we can do. So when you're getting expertise and expert advice from someone, that doesn't mean you leave your brain at the door and don't still do you. It just means you take that additional information that you didn't have, you marinate on it, you internalize it, and then you massage it to the point where it still makes sense for how you want to show up. But now you have additional tools in your toolbox. In some cases, you're going to do exactly what they told you to do. In other cases, you're just not. You're not, because it doesn't make sense for you. It doesn't make sense for your brand. It doesn't make sense for your business. It doesn't make sense for your department. It doesn't make sense based on your skill set or where you want to go. And that's okay. Because even if they tell you something and you don't do 90% of it, that 10% is 10% of information that you didn't have before you talked to them. Because you allowed yourself to surrender your ego and ask for and accept some help and some expertise externally. And that's not easy, but just because you're asking for help doesn't mean you are unworthy or that you are not smart. In fact, the best leaders understand their gaps and weaknesses and fill those. The best leaders hire people that can do the stuff they can't do. Because leading is getting stuff done through other people. Right? It's getting everybody on the same page, moving towards the same direction. And if you're going to get things done, you need people who can do stuff you cannot do. Because otherwise, then it's just you and you're doing it all yourself. And if that's what you want to do, then why hire people in the first place? So if you're going to hire the best team possible, even if that means somebody on the team does something that you cannot do or does something that you do better than you do it. Because the other thing leaders do is hire for their successor. You hire for your successor. Mm-hmm. So those of you, I was having this conversation with a client about delegation, because a lot of us have trouble delegating. That's one of the things we talk about in the summit. Delegation as opposed to, abdication. Because that doesn't mean you're just like, oop, I don't do that anymore. That's not what delegation is, right? There's a level of training. There's a level of setting expectations, all that kind of stuff. But when we were talking about it, I said, the issue a lot of times with delegation is about fear. It's about fear. If I give it to someone else, are they going to do it the same quality? Are they going to do it in the same time? Are they going to do it the way I would do it? Well, hell, you're delegating it, so you don't have to do it. They may not do it exactly the way you do it. The other piece of the fear is, ooh, but then they'll learn my job, and they may do it better than me, and then I'll lose my job. That's head trash, right? Because here's the thing about delegation. Change your perspective and change your circumstances. It's not about me delegating work or handing off work or passing off stuff to somebody else, and I know they're busy, and how dare I give them stuff because I know they're busy too. It's not about that. Especially if you're in leadership. Delegation is about building your successor. Change your perspective, change your circumstances. It's not about giving away your work. It's not about passing off your work. It's not about, shirking your responsibilities. It's about building your successor. Because the more people around you who you can actually give more opportunity to. You can give them exposure. You get to really evaluate your talent. What training do they really need? What skills do they have? What hidden skills do they have that I never had tapped into? Because there may be somebody who's really quiet on your team that is a superstar if you would just give them the opportunity. So let go, surrender that ego, delegate, because you're creating a successor. You're creating a successor. And when you get your successor, you get to move on. Whether that's over or up or out or what have you, you have created somebody that can still move forward, and you have now freed yourself up to do the next thing that's available to you or ready for you. But the less you delegate, the more you hold on. Again, change your perspective, folks. The more you hold on to what you've been doing, the more you stick yourself in that same place that you've always been. So don't get mad at other people because you're not getting the promotion, you're not getting the move, you're not getting to go. If you are not delegating, you're not training other people, you're not making space for you to move up, that's on you. That's not on them. That's on you. Now, I'm not talking about microaggression and all that kind of madness. I'm saying, if you really want to move and grow and develop and build, you build those behind you so that you can make space for them, which makes space for you. Because if you're doing it all and everything, and the conversation around you is like, well, man, but if they leave the department, we don't know what's going to happen. Well, I don't know. If they don't do it, can anybody else do it? See, that's that spiral that happens in organizations. That's why people get stuck, but that's why leaders have a hard time letting people go and moving people around, because they have stuck them in the same place because the person isn't delegating and the leader isn't forcing them to delegate. The leader also isn't helping to create successors. So you should be responsible for creating your own successor. If it's your own business, you're not necessarily creating a successor, you're creating freedom by creating time. You delegate tasks that are not value added for your zone of genius. They are critical to your business and they need to happen. But is there a better place and a better person that can do them so you can be in the space that really drives your business where you want it to go? It's all about perspective, y'all. And staying in flow, connected to where you're trying to go. And by staying in flow and staying connected to where you want to go, you can let go of some of the other stuff that says you gotta, I must, I have to, I didn't, I better. All that madness that makes us do stuff that's insane. Stay connected to where you're trying to go, to give yourself freedom to get there in the way that makes sense at the time. Because you're always going to get new information. You're always going to get new information. And if you are in flow, good morning, Ohio. If you are in flow, then you're going to be able to figure out the information that makes sense for you. You're going to be able to figure out when something doesn't feel right, because you're not coming at it from an ego perspective. You're coming at it from flow. You're coming at it from possibility. You're coming at it from, this is where I'm going. And I said it was path A, but I'm looking over here and seeing path C. And there's some stuff in path C that may make a lot of sense. I at least need to veer a little bit off on path C, but I know path C is still getting me to my ultimate goal. It just looks different than the path I planned. Right? So while proper prior planning prevents poor performance, part of that plan is flexibility. Part of a strategic plan has some flexibility in it. It gives you space to adjust. That's why there's so many challenges sometimes with people setting strategies, and there are cultures that set strategies, and heaven forbid you change a date. Heaven forbid you decide to take other information and say, oh, we can't do it. Oh my gosh. But that's a problem with innovation. That's why so many companies that want to be innovative aren't. Because if you're going to be innovative, you've got to be willing to be fast to fail. Fail fast, fail fast, fail fast. You fail fast, you figure it out, you make some adjustments, you put it out again, you fail again. But you're failing forward. And if you are unwilling to adjust, if you're unwilling to delegate, if you're unwilling to train, if you're unwilling to acknowledge that you don't know everything, you're not going to get there. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Not in the way you want it to. and not in the time you want it to, and not in the sustainable way you want it to. Because a lot of times things will happen. We can go get that car, we can go get that house, we can go build that business, but you won't be able to sustain it if you have not built the appropriate foundation, which includes an openness to additional information and perspective. Because none of us knows everything. None of us. And you never know where that additional information is going to come from. Never. It comes from the craziest places. But if you're open, if you're willing to listen, if you're willing to set your ego aside, that one piece of information may make the biggest difference in your business, or the biggest difference in your leadership style, or the biggest difference on your team. You never know when that one piece of information may make the difference, not only for you, but for somebody on your team who is really looking to move and grow and build, who just needed one person to say, you got this, I trust you. One person. One person. I know when I have to really always look at my leadership style. And one of the people that was one of my first employees, and we're still connected, love her. And I remember when we were first starting and working together, and it was crazy time, but we had a good time. And I remember us having conversations and about what was going to happen and what we needed to do. And we would talk about, what needed to happen and how it needed to happen. And I remember in every conversation, I'm like, I trust you. Just go do and just trust you, and then we'll talk about it. And I remember the first time I said that, she looked at me like I was nuts. And so part of the reason, if I'm being honest with myself, part of the reason is if I truly believe, if I am doing everything I'm telling you to do, then why do I have you? And I don't say that for the other person as much as I say that for me. If I have someone working with me, then I need to let them do their job. Now, I cannot abdicate. I need to be supportive. I need to reach out. I need to connect. I need to give guidance. I need to give direction. I need to answer questions. I need to be available. And that is a weakness of me sometimes. When I'm moving so fast, I'm not always available as I need to be. And I work on that on a daily. But that idea that surrendering to flow also means surrendering your ego and your need to micromanage so that those around you can become your successors. They can learn and grow and develop and build. Because they're not going to be able to do that if you don't allow them to do that. Let me rephrase that. They could do that, but it's going to be so painful when you could be supportive and helpful. So if you are not delegating, really go back and look at why you're not delegating. If you truly are not delegating because you say you don't have people you can delegate to, then I need you to examine your team. And you need to examine the team honestly. Is it that they can't do it, or that you haven't allowed them to do it, and so you've trained them not to make decisions? You've trained them not to do the work because you're doing it anyway, so why would they make the effort? So you need to go back and evaluate your team honestly if you feel like your team can't get the work done. And then you need to honestly look at how you are leading. And surrender to what real leadership is. Because leadership is not about position. Leadership is about behavior. Because great leaders can lead from the back. Many fantabulous leaders, you see them when it's absolutely necessary. When everything else is going on, who you see is their team. That's who you see. That's how they push up front, is their team. Because they know it's not about them. They do know that they are responsible for setting direction, setting expectations, being clear, holding people accountable, including themselves, celebrating successes, giving feedback when it's needed, correcting poor behavior, managing performance. They're responsible for all of that. And they're responsible for enabling those around them to actually do the job that they're paying them to do. So you can't be mad as a leader. You can't be mad if folks aren't doing what you want them to do if you haven't examined how you contributed to that fact. And surrender your ego. We have all worked with really egotistical leaders. We all have. If you worked in any situation, you have worked with some kind of egotistical leader. Be that somebody that you have to run into at a bank, be that, wherever. We've all worked with those leaders that are just really, really, it's all about them. And we know what that feels like. We also know the impact on the success of the organization, because that egotistical leader also many times leads with fear and leads by fear. And when people are working out of fear, that's also not sustainable. And you are not getting the best out of your people when they're just fearful, because they're just trying to be out of pain or trying to avoid pain. They're not trying to move things forward. And innovation can be painful, because innovation requires failure. Innovation requires people to challenge the status quo. So if your ego's all caught up in where we're going and what we're doing, then you're stifling innovation. Because why would somebody tell you something different? Why would they challenge your idea? Why would they ask to do something that you've never thought of if you have told them through your actions that you don't appreciate it and you're not gonna value it, and in some cases you may punish them for it? Why would they do that? They'll just take their talent somewhere else eventually. But you definitely won't get the benefit of their talent, because you're stifling it through fear. And that fear is about you and your position. That fear is not about them. And organizations need to think about this, because this rolls all the way up to the top. Those organizations that lead by fear, that, the minute somebody makes a mistake, they're fired. People see that. People listen to what you do. They believe that people listen to what you say. They believe what you do. And if you say, innovate, 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 we want you to try stuff, we want you to fail fast, we want you to have ideas, and then the minute somebody fails, you fire them, that's not what you meant. What you meant was, we don't make mistakes. And we punish people who make mistakes. That's what you meant, because that's what your behavior said, and that's what people are going to believe. So surrendering as a leader is surrendering your ego and enabling other people to move. Enabling other people to develop, understanding where your gaps and weaknesses are, and having the courage to hire people that know things you don't know and can do things better than you do them. Because in fact, the strongest leaders do that. The strongest leaders hire people that can be better than them. The strongest leaders hire for their successor, because they're trying to get up out of there eventually. That's what real leaders do. Real leaders surrender to the flow. And they stay in flow. They admit when they don't know everything. They support. They show compassion for themselves and for others. They collaborate. And they understand that there's always learning and not being afraid to learn. And I don't mean just additional stuff you want to do. Like me getting my French and Spanish back, I want to do that because I want to serve differently. Got to find this golf pro because I can't go to this golf tournament with Jerry and look like a nut. So I got to get myself together, right? I'm not talking about that kind of stuff. The ancillary kind of that really just builds rounds you out. I'm talking about that stuff that helps you learn in the space of where you're trying to serve. Like me, really learning, what does it really mean as I'm showing up as this brand? What does that look like from an executive producer mindset, right? That looks different than probably what I'm thinking. What do I target? How do I change my website so it looks different? Why do I have a media page on my website that nowhere on the website says, and here's how you work with me? It just talks about the places I've been. Well, that's really nice, but nobody cares. I mean, folks that love me care and think that's really cool, right? and I appreciate it, and I appreciate the support. But in the grand scheme of things, nobody cares about that. What can you do for them? Nobody cares about you until they know how much you care about them. How can you serve? How can you serve that podcaster who's got an audience? How can you serve their audience? If they bring you to their audience, how are you going to support them? How do you help? How do you aid? How do you assist? How do you support someone else's brand? And so in order for you to think through those things, you got to surrender that ego. You got to think about learning as an asset. You got to have the confidence to say, I don't know, and the understanding to know that I don't know is not a weakness. I don't know and I don't care to find out. Now that's a weakness. That's different. Right? Or it's a specific decision because I don't know about the algorithms and the algorithms that Facebook uses, and I don't intend to find that out. It changes too much and it's just not my zone of genius. I'm just not going to do that. Right? But I'm making a conscious decision around that, and that means I am going to go find somebody who knows how to do it because it's important in the grand scheme of things to what I want to do. But I at least acknowledge that I don't know. And in my decision not to find out, that triggered some additional decisions. The danger is when there's something you don't know, you finally acknowledge that you don't know it, then you decide you don't care to know it, and you keep it moving. Because you haven't taken the next step to say, okay, I don't want to know this, but does that impact my business? Does that impact my career? Does that impact my family? Does that impact this strategy that I have, this goal that I have? And if I go through that evaluation and the answer is no, well, fine, I can keep it moving. But if the answer is yes, and I don't want to learn it, then what am I willing to do to make sure somebody learns it so I can have the benefit of it? But that takes a willingness, one, to be true to you, and to just surrender. Just be in flow. Just be in flow. We can't control everything. But when you're in flow, what you need comes to you. It always does. What you need comes to you. Okay, I'm hot today for some reason. Excuse me, y'all.
Well, isn't it a saying that says when the student is ready, the teacher appears?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
You have to, and when you said that, you have to be honest, and some people call the universe, I say God.
Mm-hmm.
He knows when you're really ready, because I believe that when he knows that you're really ready, things that you have been asking him for, or things that you know in your spirit you're ready for, they do show up.
They do.
They just pop up. And so is it a time like when you say as leaders, we have to let people be willing to fail? Or is there a time to say, okay, we're in a crunch time right now, and I probably don't need someone who wants to learn at this time. I need an expert.
Yes.
In this area.
Yes, absolutely. You still got to be, you're still responsible. You're still responsible. Good morning, Mama. You're still responsible. Yeah, that's my mom. My mom just joined. I'll call you later because I want to see your hair. She got her hair did this morning. You're still responsible, and part of that surrendering and part of that knowledge is. Am I still on? It sounds different. Part of that knowledge is understanding as you're building a team, whether that's employees or whether that's service providers, is understanding when you have the capacity for somebody to learn and when you really do need that expert. And that ebbs and flows over time. You know, can you take an intern at this point in time? Because you need some stuff done, but you're able to take somebody who's learning.
And another thing I want to ask you while you're on that point, I was looking at President Joe Biden, and he was saying that he vows to have 1 million shots out in 100 days. 1 million vaccines given, 1 million within 100 days. And there are a lot of people who are criticizing that and saying that he's aiming too low. That's where they are now. He should aim higher. But when I think about that, I prefer someone who will undersell and over-deliver.
Yeah.
So which one is it? Do we want somebody to come in, I can do this, I can do that, because I've had a lot of that before.
Oh, yeah.
Then they under-delivered and I was left destroyed. Like, damn.
Yeah. You know, Jerry, honestly, I think it's a balance. I think it depends on what you're talking about, right? So, like I heard this morning, he did up it to 150 million, right? From 100 million. 150 million vaccines. But he's also, I think, it's kind of like those stretch goals. And there are some places where you do want to put out something that's a stretch. You want it to be a stretch because it gives people incentive to try more and do more, right? Because what do they say? You'll never hit the stars. If you're aiming for the moon, if you're aiming for the stars, maybe you'll at least hit the moon or something like that. I always get it wrong. So you do have to put things out there that I think can be stretch goals. Here's what I think the difference is. It's one thing if you're authentically putting out a goal to say, here's our aim. This is what we're trying to do. We want 150 million doses in arms in the first 100 days. That's what we want. And we're moving that way. It's another thing to say, yeah, we're going to get 150 million. And you know, not only can you not do it, but you're not going to do the work to do it. That's different. And I think that's what happens sometimes when we have people commit to do things for us and we don't do enough evaluation and research. Have you done it before? Where have you done it before? Were you successful before? If you tried it before but it didn't work, why? What are you doing different this time? If we don't do our research around the people that are really making these pie in the sky, we are going to hit the moon every time. We're going to hit Mars our first time out. Well, okay, but you know, do you have something that gives me some confidence that you're going to make it? Or at least get close enough that I'm not going to have just wasted a whole lot of time and money and effort or heartbreak, right? So I think it's a balance, Jerry. It is aiming high. You want to aim high. You really want to aim high. You want to be realistic, but you want to aim high, because sometimes we settle for mediocre just because we're afraid to aim higher. So you want to aim high, but you also want to be very discerning. If there's other people that you're aiming high with, is everybody really on board? Is everybody really capable? Is everybody really willing to jump in and do what's necessary to help get there? Or are they just trying to convince you? It's like people lying on the resume. Are they just trying to convince you so they can get the opportunity? But the opportunity isn't really what they want. They just want the name, or they just want to put their logo somewhere, or they just want to say they did it. You know, you just got to do some more digging.
You know, Larry King, he passed away this week. And as I look at the life of Larry King, I really admire Larry King because I consider him broadcast excellence. Mm-hmm. And when we're talking about radio and doing shows of that nature, I always try to find people kind of that have that Larry King mindset. Right. That we're going to be journalists, and I know this is radio, but I want to take this very seriously and do this as journalists. Because you have to have time and you have to have receipts to put in that type of resume later on down the road. And if you come in saying, this is what you have, this is what you can do, people are going to ask you, let me see the proof, prove it, of what you've done. If we look up Larry King's resume, we'll of course see the proof. And as we're building, you want to give people opportunity, because I've given people opportunity time and time again who didn't have the resume. Sometimes it worked, and sometimes it absolutely blew up in my face.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and that's where, you know, you also have to decide what risk you're willing to take. What can you take at that time? Because sometimes we just don't have the bandwidth to take a whole lot of risk. Yeah. And we just need to own that, right? It's okay. If you are in a position where in your department, in your business, in your life, whatever, you don't have the bandwidth to take the risk, don't take it. Because you're not necessarily going to actually be giving the person the opportunity anyway. You're going to be doing more than you would pay. And so you're paying somebody for work that you're doing. So just don't take the risk. It's okay. It is, I'm telling y'all, it is okay. You need to do you. It is okay. Just own it. And then when you are ready and you are capable of having somebody come in where you can spend more time, you can afford to have bigger mistakes made, you can afford to have things take longer, then do that. Because again, it's about creating a successor. It's about legacy creation. It's about freedom. Because if you are having to do everything all the time, you don't have freedom to do the other stuff you want to do.
And as you said earlier, and I think this will help a lot of leaders we have on today, as you said earlier, just as you see this radio station, sometimes people see me in here by myself, but there's actually people who work for me outside of this radio station. And so you said as a leader, you can decide maybe you want to hire services as opposed to a team. Why? Right. As opposed to employees.
You know, so that is a big decision. That's one of the things I talk about from a strategy perspective with leaders is you have to first think about what work needs to be done. What is the work that needs to be done? You got to start there. Don't just start with, I need to hire people. Well, okay, wait. What work needs to be done? That's number one. The second thing is, why can't I or do I not want to do that work myself? Time, skill, whatever, right? So if you know what work needs to be done and you know that you are not the one to do it, then you go to the third step, which is, okay, am I going to hire an employee or am I going to hire a service? And then that becomes a more strategic discussion, right? Hiring an employee comes along with payroll, comes along with taxes, comes along with performance, it comes along with a lot of stuff, especially for those of you listening in California. There's a lot of rules around how you hire people. If you are hiring people and you have a group that is covered by an employment contract, a union, that has a whole different kind of issue, right? So there's some things you need to consider if you're talking about hiring an employee. If you're hiring a service, that becomes a contractual situation, which is a lot different. I'm hiring you to do X for this amount of money, and I expect this kind of timing, I expect this kind of quality, blah, blah, blah. So it's a different kind of relationship, a different kind of conversation that you have. But you have to decide what is the work that needs to be done? Am I going to do the work? And then you start talking about, is it an employee or is it a service? And both of those are valid. It depends on where you are and what you're needing. But you got to take the time. Go slow to go fast. You got to take the time to ask yourself those questions and really decide before you just go out just hiring somebody. Even if it is a service. You need to think about that before you do it. Do some research, understand what can you expect to get. For those of you smaller businesses who have the PEOs, those organizations that do all of your payroll and HR and all that, they're a big combo organization. That's great. But did you do the research? And when they do payroll taxes, are they responsible if there's an error? Or are they not responsible if there's an error? Are they responsible for filing? Or are you responsible for filing? Did you go do your research when you got a service? Or were you in so much pain and so quick to just stop having to do it that you just went and hired anybody? Go slow to go fast. Take the time to do the research. Take the time to set a strategy and then make a decision. Because if you've done that and set your foundation, even if you make the best decision you thought possible, if something comes up later that says you need to pivot, at least you're pivoting from something solid. You're not just willy-nilly in the wind, said, oh, that didn't work, let me try this. Oh, that didn't work, let me try this. You're not like a ping pong ball. You actually have something from which you are making a decision.
I'm thinking about when you posted it on Facebook, and I'm looking at that beautiful banner again, and once again, there's a new banner of Jerry P. Beasley coming up soon. I'm thinking about when you said on Facebook, you said, well, it's official.
It's official.
Official. Jerry P. Beasley has put me in the window. That did something for me because it takes a moment for that to happen.
It does.
And it could have been a whole lot of people, but I guess you do say go slow, because there's a reason why we go slow when you're handling something of such a delicate nature that is historic.
Yes.
And for you to be excited about that, that's the kind of vibe I like and I want in the company needs, because it's an historical moment.
It is.
To get in there. And when other people recognize that it's an historical moment, I believe they put the effort out that's stronger. Sometimes you can be kind of lackadaisical and not know what you just inherited. But when you get people that say, wait a minute, if I do this, I can make it to the window. That's a good incentive. So
exactly. And and I don't take that for granted because, I mean, I was confident that this was going to be fine, but I wasn't confident that this was going to be fine. Fine. But that was more about me, and I've never done radio before. I've not done this before. I've talked a lot. Right? And I've done stuff before, but I've not done this before. And so it was the fear or the lack of ease related to the unknown. And so going slow to go fast, have the show, come every week, make sure it makes sense. Try to do that balance, figure out what works in terms of PSAs versus, promoting the stuff you're doing. Because you guys will start hearing me promote more of the stuff that I'm doing to serve people as well. But y'all had to figure out who I was first. Yeah. It didn't make any sense for me to be promoting stuff. And y'all were like, who is this chick?
That's good, Lord.
What has she got to say? Why are we even listening to her? But now you know who I am. You know what I stand for. You know what I can deliver. And so it makes more sense for me to say, and here's the other things that I do. Would love to have you. Or if it's not for you, pass it on to somebody that you know that makes some sense. But I had to go slow to go fast. And that is difficult for type A people.
But I'm paying attention to what you're doing, because even when we're on social media, as you talk about being on social media, I like the fact, because I don't do that either, that you don't jump on and say, like, click, and share. Hurry up, like, click, and share. If I haven't even heard what you're going to say, that is it shareable? Right. So I think we lose a lot of that when we don't let people get to know us first before we go in for the hard sell. Exactly. And I'm really funny about sales. I don't consider myself a salesperson. Although my really good friend, who is like the consummate salesperson, he's like, you are a great salesperson when you're passionate about something. I'm like, that's a good point. But I know that part of my reluctance, and again, this gets back to surrendering and finding people who have expertise where you don't have it. Part of my reluctance is how do I call people to action to come work with me without it feeling sleazy? Because I hate, so I'm just putting y'all on notice. I hate it when people reach out to me on LinkedIn and say, oh, I would love to connect, loved your profile, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay. And I connect, and as soon as I connect, it's like, oh, can you buy my thing?
Really? I don't know you like that. And more importantly, you don't know me. You just saw my profile. It fits something that you're looking for, so you're selling me something. So a lot of times you'll see ads that I do that just say, hey, here's this thing coming up. Here's where you join. But part of the learning and the building for me is, one, a confused mind doesn't buy, so you can't put too much stuff out there. But two, you have to ask people for what you want. Please go download my podcast, right? I'm still trying to get to 5,000. I'm almost there, y'all. I didn't make it by the end of the year, but I got really close. So still trying to make it. Please go download my podcast. But I feel comfortable asking people to do that now because I know the quality. And I know the information that's in there. And I've gotten enough feedback and I've done enough episodes that I do know that it can have a good impact. So I'd love for people to go download it. Pass it on to somebody. Because I know there's some messages in there that can make a difference.
But you also invested in you first before you asked everybody else to make that investment into you. And a lot of times we miss that. We want others to invest in us, but we haven't made the first initial investment in what we're doing.
Exactly. And I will continue to make that investment because that's one of the things for me when I talk about surrendering for 2021 is what are some other things that I need to do to continue my learning so that I can continue to deliver stuff to you, right? Mastery works. Mastery pays. How can I continue to build my knowledge base so that I am bringing better and deeper and greater stuff to y'all, right? Because that's what's important. For me, that's what's important.
So let me say this real quick. So you say you don't do social media, which you really in the beginning didn't really do social media. I didn't. But you found somebody.
Yes.
That does social media. Because we can say that all day long. I've said that. I don't know. I'm not tweeting. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. But I got stuck at I'm not doing this and didn't find somebody. So to help those that say, I don't do this, it is our responsibility. We'll find someone who will do it for you.
Right. So again, it goes back to what is it that you want? What is it that you want? If you have a brick and mortar business and you decide you don't want to be on social media, fine. You got a brick and mortar business. It's going to take you a little bit longer to build it because right now, in this day and age, if you don't have a website, you're not legit. Because most people are online, right? Yeah. That being said, there are a lot of people who build their businesses without a website. They may have just a Facebook page or they may just have a phone number or a LinkedIn profile and they build their business. But you have to look at that and say, did they already have a network? Did they already have a client base? That worked for them, but why? And how long did it take it? Because people will tell you it took them 2 minutes. It took them 2 minutes, but it didn't. It may have taken them 2 minutes this year, but it took them 20 years to get to that 2 minutes, right? So the first thing is understanding what exactly you want to build. And then the next thing is, what am I willing to do to try to build it? So, I am not big on social media. It just pains me. But I do the posting that I need to do, right? I do the lives that I need to do. I do my postings Monday, Wednesday, Friday, my Friday food for thought, I'll go live with something that just happens to speak to me. But I also know a lot of it is about consistency and making sure you're showing up because people's attention spans are short. And there is so much information out there that I know part of my visibility is to be more consistent and to be out there more. But I also know it makes me crazy. It makes me crazy. It really does kind of work my nerves to be able to be constantly thinking about, did I post? What should I post? How should I post? What does it look like? I can't, y'all. I just can't. I have to know that about me. But I also know for my goal, it is important to do it. So you go find a service. You go find somebody else who can stand in that gap, as they say. So I've got somebody who stands in the gap for me. I do the stuff that I can do. I do the stuff that must be me. Like I do my videos. Clearly nobody else is doing my videos, right? I do the videos. I do lives because that needs to be me. I do a number of my posts because that needs to be me. And then I found a service, one that is technically excellent, but also through the relationship, because this didn't happen overnight. I hired this person to do something else first. That's the other thing to think about. I hired this person to do something else first, to just clip my videos, because I didn't have time to clip my videos. Right? So even not just social media. I'm like, I'm creating all this video content and I am not utilizing it. I need little clips. And I started clipping it myself and I'm like, oh my God, it is going to take me forever to go through all these videos just to get some really good clips. That makes no sense. No sense to waste my time. Not waste my time, to use my time that way. So when I first found somebody who could do that. that morphed into this person now doing social media for me because they also have that skill. And now we've worked together. I know their quality. I know their timeliness. They know me. They know my message. They know what I stand for. And so the relationship has morphed into something that is beneficial for both of us. And so it is important when you get ready to find a service, whatever that service is, whether that's an accountant, whether that's an HR person, a marketing person, a branding person, a social media, whatever. Know what you need and what you want. Do the research to find the person. And even once you start working together, understand that the first part of that is going to be about building a relationship. Yes, you did your research and you hired them, but you don't have a relationship yet. You have a business arrangement. You don't have a relationship yet. The relationship is built over time. And so this person that I hired to do social media, the relationship started as, hey, I need somebody going through my videos and making these clips. But then we started having meetings. We started talking about how it can be used. We started talking about, my philosophy around that. We started talking about her ideas around how we can make it better and how we can use it different places. Those conversations began to build that professional relationship. Her listening to all my stuff gave her a good insight into me and my business. And because we built this professional relationship, now she can also give me a level of feedback and a kind of feedback that I can accept because I know she knows me. And I know she is also on board with where I'm trying to go. But that didn't happen overnight. That happened over, a few months. But I was willing, 1, to know what I needed, 2, admit that I needed it, and 3, go find somebody who could deliver it. And then you just have to work it as a reasonable person. That's what you got to do, right? But you got to be willing first. Oh, I'm over again. You got to be willing first to say you need some help. If you're not willing to say you need some help, you'll never get there. It's just not possible. It's not possible. All right. So that's today's show. The Rutledge Perspective with Laurel Rutledge.
Amazing.
Thank you so much for tuning in again. I am so appreciative of you guys. Remember, the groups I'll be posting on my page. Jerry, I'll tag you too, so we can put it out there on your page if you're so inclined. I'll be on Clubhouse on Wednesday, so I'll be posting this stuff so you guys can get to it.
So the Clubhouse thing, for the Android users, it's only for
iPhone. It's only for iPhone right now, and that's why I'm asked to be. Oh, I know what I forgot. Something for y'all to think about. And this is why I also hired somebody. I'm like, can you always also go back and it's kind of these things that I say that I can never remember. Can you just find them and write them down? Because she's like, you quote other people, but I need you to quote you because you say some good stuff. I'm like, okay. So I was talking to another person and she was talking about corporate and how difficult it is and all this kind of stuff, which is true because there's real trauma out of corporate organizations. And I said, here's the thing. In order to move forward, we always recall situations that we were in because I recall stuff from my first job and I'm like, oh man, I should have said, right? That's from decades ago. And I said, here's the thing. You know that you are ready to keep moving when the recollection, when you think about that old thing and it becomes a recollection, not a feeling. When it becomes a recollection and not a feeling. You're just remembering it. You're not feeling it anymore. When you get to that point, you're ready to use it as information to form your wisdom. And with that, I'll leave y'all.
Well, can we give a shout out?
Oh, shout outs.
To our app listeners today.
Yeah.
Washington, D.C. is in strong today. We've got Beaumont, Texas.
Awesome.
Port Arthur is in. Chicago is in. Good morning to you, Dallas, Fort Worth. Orlando, Dayton is in. Colorado Springs is in, and Austin is in.
Yay.
San Antonio, Kansas City is in. Houston goes without saying.
Love it.
Is in on today. We've got the Philippines coming in strong today. Germany is in. Cameroon is in. United Kingdom is in the building today. Spain is in the building.
Yay.
France is in the building, and Mexico.
I love it.
Today.
Thank you guys. Merci. Gracias. Dankeschön. I appreciate y'all all being here.
Adios.
We'll see you next week.